to make sure.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of AFMC TV. I'm your host, Michelle Rupp. Joining us today is Rebecca Denniston from Dermatology Group of Arkansas. And we are talking, of course, we've been talking about catching up on different checkups. And a dermatology checkup is just as important as a dental or a vision or primary care. Yes. So we are nearing the end of summer, and it's been a summer. And so what are some of the things that we need to be kind of taking a look at, being aware of as we start to go into the winter months?
Yes, great question. Definitely towards the end of summer, I think that's when people start thinking about skin checks because they've been in the sun, all summer long. They might have had some bad sunburns during the summer. So really, getting into the fall time is a great time of year for a skin check. You can do at-home skin checks. That's something that is easy for a person to do. Things that you would want to look out for. So moles in particular, anything that's become asymmetrical, maybe the borders have changed, maybe the color is different, it's bigger, or just changing in general. Those are things to look out for. And so you can, definitely look at your moles at home and kind of check and see if things have changed. And then of course, if something's bleeding or not healing, those are kind of some red flags. But then in general, if you aren't particularly worried about something, you can definitely come in and have a good, exam.
Just because you find a mole doesn't mean you've got skin cancer, right?
That's right. Yes.
There are just some harmless moles or freckles.
Oh, yes, definitely. And so sometimes it's hard for, the standard person to tell, what's harmful, what's not harmful. And so definitely coming in and having those checked, we can, kind of give you a gauge of, things to look out for. But yes, it's sometimes very difficult to tell what's harmful and not.
And they could be, and to your point, the whole reason why we'd want to come in, but you could have them on your scalp too.
That's right.
Places you can't see.
Yes, that's right. And so that's one of the benefits to a skin check is we really try to do a total body skin check. So head to toe, we look through your scalp, we look in between your toes, the bottom of your feet, places that you wouldn't normally look. And then the big thing is your back. You can't see your own back. And so that's something that, having someone look at, like a dermatologist, that's going to be, a good thing for sure.
How often should we be having these checkups?
So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Number of moles on your body, family history, how often are you in the sun? Did you have bad sunburns as a kid? I think starting off with a baseline skin check is good for any person, no matter the age, especially if you have a lot of moles. But if you've got family history, that's definitely a reason to come in, especially if it's family history of melanoma. And so for the average person that maybe they don't have a family history of skin cancer, they don't have a ton of moles, then you could, have a skin check every 3 to 5 years. But if you've got that history or you have a ton of moles, we may be seeing you every year or every 2 years, and then sometimes sooner if you've had, skin cancer.
If you have a little bit of a family history, but maybe don't have a lot of moles, do they go hand in hand in terms of if you have family history, then you're really likely to develop?
Yes. So yes and no. Melanoma specifically, there can be a genetic correlation with that. And so for sure, if you have a history of melanoma, it's something that or family history of melanoma, you don't want to take that lightly. Sure. Getting a skin check for sure is important. And then other types of skin cancer like basal cell and squamous cell, those are usually from sun exposure throughout your life. And so the history just kind of goes out the door. It's not, anybody could get those. And so the big thing is the number of sunburns you've had in your life will increase that risk. Okay. And so, just a couple bad sunburns as a kid could give you skin cancer later in life. And it's all cumulative. So these skin checks are very important really at any age. We see skin cancer in 20 and 30-year-olds, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
is there, what is the definition of a bad sunburn? Because my definition and your definition may be different.
Yeah. Most of the time, when you have a sunburn, that skin is, red, pink, That's definitely a sunburn, but there can be very bad sunburns that are more blistering in nature. Yeah. Those are obviously, much worse. But really any sunburn is going to put you at risk for skin cancer potentially later.
Okay. And about how long is a visit? How long of a check?
Yeah, so they're pretty quick visits. We bring you in. If you choose to do a full head to toe exam, we get you in a gown, and it probably takes about 10 minutes to really kind of thoroughly look at everything. And then, potentially if we have to take some spots off that may be concerning, that's really pretty quick to do. It just takes a couple minutes. So it's very easy, and it can be overwhelming to come in and potentially have to be cut on, but it's really not as bad as it sounds. The big thing with dermatology and skin cancer is prevention. And so if you can, come in and have those checks early, it's going to make a difference for sure.
Definitely. Okay. Becca, anything else we need to know?
Yeah, I think, just making sure that you're coming in for your skin checks, it's important, but then also your sunscreen and paying attention to your own body, all that goes hand in hand.
Even as we do eventually head into the fall,
That's right.
into the winter,
Yes,
it's important.
Definitely.
Okay. Becca, thanks so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Joining me now is Dr. JJ Mayo, and we are talking about being active over the age of 60. That's really when life begins, right? Hi, Dr. JJ. How are you?
How's it going, Michelle? Excited to be here.
Thanks so much for talking to us. So let's just jump right in. Let's first start by talking about mobility training, particularly when we're in a retirement age.
Yeah. So as we get older, I think one of the most important things, overarching ideas here, is that we're trying to maintain our independence. I don't know about y'all, but I've always told my classes, my students, that I never want to really end up in a nursing home. And so I always want to be as active as I can for as long as I can and live a quality life. And that's what activity does for us into our older years. And I'm almost there. You said 60, so I'm getting close to that. But age is just kind of a number, because I know a lot of people that are in their 60s and 70s that are way fitter than folks that are in their 30s and 40s. And so being mobile and being able to be, a lot of times we call it functional, doing functional activities, things like stretching, things like strengthening, because one of the things we know as we get older is that we lose bone mineral density and we lose muscle. And so to try to maintain that, then strength training is important as well. And all the components of fitness, having a little bit of cardiovascular fitness is important, along with the flexibility and the strengthening is important for just the overall health. And so simple things that as you're 30, you don't really think about. Even my students at 18, 19, they don't think about the fact that when you're driving, you need some flexibility to turn your head to see cars behind you and on the side of you, and just stuff like that. Being able to bend over, and get up and down off the floor. Those are simple things that a lot of times when you're younger, you take it for granted. But as you get older, they're very important. And so maintaining that mobility is extremely important.
So if someone is watching this and they've not really led much of an active lifestyle, but they want to begin, what are some ways that they can begin to prepare themselves or set themselves up for a little bit better later on in life?
Yeah, I always say it's never too late to start, because it doesn't matter what you got going on, because a lot of people will use excuses that maybe they've got some kind of injury or they've got some kind of limitation, whatever it may be, a knee or a hip, but there are always things you can do to work around that. One of the suggestions I would make if you're just getting started is to join a class. I'm kind of biased, but my mother-in-law teaches a class. It's called Forever Fit. Sometimes they call it Body Recall. And it's a class, an hour class that's done in a chair. And they do some standing exercises too. But it is extremely effective in maintaining strength and flexibility for these older individuals. And there have been people in her classes that are in their 70s and 80s, and maybe even 90s, and with all kinds of disabilities, but they're still, because here's the truth of the matter is that if you don't do anything, it's just going to continue to get worse. So you got to do something, right? Start where you are, make small steps. And like I said, if you're at home, you can always and it doesn't take much, right? Just 5 minutes. And if you get tired, you just take a rest and maybe do another 5 minutes. So it's just really small incremental steps to become fitter.
How long should a retiree or someone over the age of 60, how long should they exercise?
That's a good point. I mean, the guidelines for older adults are really similar to the guidelines for younger adults. They recommend around 150 minutes a week of activity, and that's going to be to promote health. And when we talk about promoting health, we're talking about improving blood pressure and cholesterol levels and blood sugar and that type of thing. But if you're really looking for weight loss, it's going to be upwards to 60 minutes a day. And I know that can be a little challenging for folks to think, oh, 60 minutes. But that's going to help burn those extra calories, and that's important for a lot of us. And it doesn't have to be strenuous exercise. It can be a light walk or an easy bike, just something like that, or a class, a exercise, group exercise class, like my mother-in-law teaches.
Someone might be curious and think, okay, well, this all sounds great, and I want to jump in and start moving around and getting more mobile. But then how do you prevent injury? Because sometimes if you do too much too soon, it ends up backfiring.
Right. And that's where I think a class could come in handy, where you have somebody that's leading you and instructing you and watching your form and your activity. Injuries do happen, but I think the risks of not doing anything and not being active at all are way worse than the potential risk of injury, especially if you're just going really shorter distances or the intensity is really low. The risk of injury is pretty small.
And then my last question would be, can we still build muscle even over the age of 60?
Oh, that's going to be really difficult, Michelle. You may be able to, but most of us at that age, it's, we're on the decline. So really the goal would be to maintain the muscle that we have. I would like to think that you're never going to end up looking like a Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, bodybuilder type. You might be able to gain a little muscle, but it's not going to be something that you're going to be wanting to show off in a mirror or two or something like that. But just being active is going to help maintain the muscle that you have. And that's one of the most important benefits of exercise, is not necessarily maybe burning a few extra calories, but really it's to maintain the muscle and the bone mineral density, right? Because that's important too.
All right. Dr. Mayo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next week for more AFMC TV.